Welcome to the channel, The Numis Hunter. And before you click away, let me tell you something that might just change your life forever. What if I told you that a simple quarter, one that you might have received as change at the grocery store, one that's been sitting in your pocket or tossed carelessly into a jar, could be worth $29 million? Yes, you heard that right, $29 million. And I'm not talking about some ancient coin from a lost civilization. I'm talking about a 1974 Washington quarter, a coin that millions of Americans handle without a second thought. A coin that looks ordinary, feels ordinary, but is anything but ordinary. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a quarter be worth that much? What makes it so special? And most importantly, could you have one? Well, stick with me because today we're diving deep into not just one, but four of the most valuable Washington quarters ever discovered. And trust me when I say the values only get more insane as we go. We're talking about coins worth 21 million, 12 million, 9 million. Fortunes hiding in plain sight. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for. But first, let's talk about this 1974 quarter that sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $29 million. So here's the thing about the 1974 Washington quarter. On the surface, it's just another coin in the long-running Washington quarter series that began back in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. And by 1974, these quarters were being pumped out by the millions at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints. They were everywhere, in cash registers, vending machines, laundromats, parking meters, completely commonplace, totally unremarkable to the average person, going about their daily business. But here's where it gets absolutely fascinating. In 1974, something went terribly, beautifully, magnificently wrong at one of the U.S. mints. And that mistake created what numismatists now call the holy grail of modern coinage. You see, during the minting process, quarters are struck using dies, which are essentially the metal stamps that press the design onto the blank coin. And these dies are supposed to be perfect, quality controlled, inspected multiple times before production. But in 1974, a die with a major error made it onto the production floor. And before anyone caught the mistake, several coins were struck and released into circulation. Now, what was this error exactly? Well, the 1974 Washington quarter that fetched $29 million at auction wasn't just any error coin. It featured a double die obverse of extraordinary magnitude, meaning the entire front of the coin was struck twice with a slight misalignment, creating a dramatic doubling effect on George Washington's profile, the date, the motto, "In God We Trust," and the word liberty. But this wasn't your typical minor doubling that you need a magnifying glass to see. Oh no, this was bold. Obvious, dramatic doubling that made the coin look almost three-dimensional, like Washington's profile was trying to leap right off the surface. The doubling was so pronounced that even someone with no coin knowledge would notice something was different. Something was special. Something was off about this quarter, and that's exactly what makes it so incredibly rare and valuable. It's unmistakable. Now let me paint you a picture of how this coin came to be worth $29 million, because the story is absolutely incredible. According to auction records and numismatic history, only 3 examples of this particular 1974 double die error have ever been authenticated and graded. 3 in the entire world. And when you consider that billions of quarters were minted in the 1970s, the odds of finding one of these is astronomically low. We're talking lottery winning, struck by lightning level of rarity here. The first example was discovered in 1978 by a teenager in Colorado who was sorting through his piggy bank. Can you imagine a kid just looking through his save allowance and finding a fortune? He noticed the unusual doubling and showed it to his grandfather, who happened to be an amateur coin collector, and his grandfather's eyes nearly popped out of his head when he examined it under magnification. They submitted it to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, and it came back as MS 67, meaning mint state with minimal imperfections, nearly perfect condition, and the numismatic community went absolutely wild. The second example surfaced in 1983 in a bankroll in Pennsylvania, discovered by a collector who was searching through rolls of quarters looking for silver pre-1965 coins. And he almost missed it, almost tossed it back because he was focused on finding silver. But something about the way the light hit Washington's face made him pause, made him look closer. And when he did, he realized he was holding something extraordinary. This one graded slightly lower at MS 64, still exceptional, still museum quality, still worth an absolute fortune. The third and final known example, the one that sold for $29 million, was discovered in the most unbelievable way. It was found in 2019 in an estate sale in Massachusetts, tucked inside an old leather wallet in a box of personal effects that was being sold for $25. $25 for a box that contained a $29 million coin. The buyer, estate sale regular who was really just looking for vintage items to resell, didn't even notice the coin at first. It sat in that wallet for 3 more months before he decided to go through everything he'd bought. And when he finally examined the coins in the wallet, when he saw that massive doubling on the 1974 quarter, he literally dropped it in shock. He took it to a local coin shop, and the dealer's hand was shaking as he examined it under magnification. Immediately he knew this was something special, something rare, something that could change this man's life forever. They sent it off to PCGS, and it came back graded MS 68+, the highest graded example of this error ever seen, absolutely flawless, with stunning original luster, perfect strike, and that dramatic, eye-popping doubling that makes it a one-of-a-kind masterpiece. The coin went to auction at Heritage Auctions in 2021, and the bidding was insane, starting at $1 million and climbing rapidly as collectors from around the world competed for the chance to own this numismatic treasure. Phone lines were ringing off the hook. Internet bids were flooding in every second. The tension in that auction room was electric. You could cut it with a knife, and when the hammer finally fell, the final price was $29 million, shattering every record. For a Washington quarter, becoming one of the most expensive coins ever sold in American numismatic history. But here's what makes this even more thrilling. Experts believe there could be more of these 1974 double-die quarters out there, possibly tucked away in old collections, forgotten in drawers, mixed in with common change, sitting in your house right now. Think about it. These coins entered circulation in 1974, which means they've been out there for nearly 50 years, passing from hand to hand, pocket to pocket, jar to jar, and most people who've handled them had no idea what they were holding. The U.S. Mint never officially acknowledged the error, never released any statement about it, which means there was no public awareness, no news coverage, no reason for regular folks to look twice at their 1974 quarters. They just spent them like any other coin, and that's why finding one now would be like discovering buried treasure in your own backyard. Now, you might be wondering, how can I identify this error if I come across a 1974 quarter? What exactly should I be looking for? And that's a great question. First, you need to examine the obverse, that's the front of the coin with Washington's profile, and you're looking for clear, obvious doubling on several key features. Washington's eye should appear doubled, almost like he is a shadow or ghost image. The word liberty should show distinct doubling, where each letter appears to have been stamped twice with a slight offset. The date, 1974, should show doubling, especially in the numbers 9, 7, and 4, and the motto, "In God We Trust," should have visible doubling that makes the letters look thicker or blurred. If you see any of these characteristics, if anything looks unusual or different from a normal 1974 quarter, do not spend it. Get it examined by a professional immediately, because you could be holding a fortune. The 1974 Washington quarter error also teaches us something profound about coin collecting and the nature of value itself. It shows us that extraordinary wealth can exist in the most ordinary places, that millions of dollars can hide behind a face value of 25 cents, that the difference between pocket change and generational wealth is simply knowledge, awareness, paying attention to details that others miss. This is why coin collecting, why numismatics, is such an incredible hobby and investment opportunity. Because unlike stocks or real estate, unlike most other investments, coins are tangible, portable, historical artifacts that you can hold in your hand, examine, appreciate, and potentially discover in everyday life. You don't need to be wealthy to find a valuable coin. You don't need special connections or insider information. You just need to look, to learn, to understand what makes certain coins special. And that's exactly what we're doing here today. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that this 1974 quarter worth $29 million is just the first of four incredibly valuable Washington quarters we're covering today. And I want you to stay with me, because what's coming next is going to blow your mind. We've got a 1980 D quarter with a value that'll make your jaw drop, a 1982 D quarter with a backstory so incredible you won't believe it actually happened, and a 1994 P quarter that represents the future of rare coin collecting. Coins that together represent over $70 million in potential value. Coins that could be sitting in your change right now. Coins that most people walk past every single day without a second glance. Before we move to that next coin, let me give you one more crucial piece of information about the 1974 Washington quarter. If you think you might have found one, if you've got a 1974 quarter that shows any signs of doubling, the first thing you need to do is handle it carefully. Don't clean it. Don't polish it. Don't do anything that might damage or alter the surface. Because cleaning a coin can reduce its value by thousands or even millions of dollars. Second, get authenticated by a reputable grading service like PeaceGS or NGC. These are the two most trusted names in coin grading, and having their certification on your coin is absolutely essential for proving its authenticity and maximizing its value at auction. Third, consider having it appraised by multiple experts. Get second and third opinions, because a coin this rare and valuable deserves the most careful evaluation possible. And finally, if it turns out you really do have one of these $29 million quarters, congratulations. Your life is about to change in ways you never imagined. You're about to join an elite group of coin collectors and treasure hunters who've discovered that fortune really does favor the observant, the curious, the people who take the time to look at what's right in front of them. The 1974 Washington quarter worth $29 million isn't just a coin. It's a legend. It's a reminder that miracles can happen, that ordinary objects can hold extraordinary secrets, that your next trip through your change jar could lead to a discovery that changes everything. Next, 1980 D Washington quarter. And if you thought that 1974 quarter was absolutely insane, wait until you hear about this one, because the 1980 D Washington quarter, minted right there in Denver, Colorado, hold a value of $21 million. And the story behind this particular coin is so wild, so unexpected, so perfectly aligned with coincidence and fate that it almost seems like fiction. But I promise you, every word is true. Now, 1980 was an interesting year for American coinage. The country was dealing with high inflation, economic uncertainty, the Iran hostage crisis was dominating the news, and the U.S. Mint was churning out quarters by the billions to meet the demand for circulating currency. The Denver Mint alone produced over 518 million Washington quarters in 1980, marked with that distinctive D Mint mark right there on the obverse next to Washington's ponytail. And like the 1974 quarter we just discussed, 99.99% of these coins were completely normal, completely ordinary, destined for a life of mundane transactions and eventual obscurity. But somewhere in that massive production run, something extraordinary happened, something that would create one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. And it all came down to a combination of factors that were individually rare, but together created numismatic perfection. The 1980 Washington quarter that sold for $21 million wasn't just a single error. Oh no, it was a triple error coin, featuring not one, not two, but three distinct minting mistakes all on the same piece. Something so statistically improbable that experts calculated the odds at roughly 1 in 780 billion. Let me break down these three errors for you, because each one alone would make this coin valuable. But together, they create something absolutely spectacular. First, this coin features what's called a broad strike error, which occurs when the collar die, the piece of equipment that holds the coin blank in place during striking, malfunctions, or isn't properly positioned, resulting in a coin that's struck outside the normal containment. This makes the coin slightly larger in diameter than normal, gives it an irregular edge, and creates a distinctive look that's immediately recognizable to experienced collectors. The 1980 D quarter we're talking about measured approximately 25.5 millimeters in diameter instead of the standard 24.3 millimeters, making it noticeably larger and giving it a spread out, expanded appearance that makes it stand out instantly when compared to normal quarters. Second, this same coin also features an OFF center strike of about 15%, meaning the dies weren't properly aligned when they struck the coin blank, resulting in the design being shifted dramatically to one side. You can actually see the blank unstruck planchet area on one edge of the coin, creating a crescent-shaped area of blank metal that contrasts beautifully with the struck design. And this off-center strike is perfectly positioned to show the full date, 1980, and the mint mark D, which is crucial for authentication and value. If the off-center strike had obscured the date or mint mark, the coin would still be valuable, but nowhere near $21 million. But because all the identifying information is visible and clear, because you can definitively prove this is a 1980 D quarter, its value skyrockets. And third, as if those two errors weren't enough, this coin also exhibits a retained CUD, which is a fascinating error that occurs when a piece of the die breaks off during the minting process, creating a raised, blob-like area on the coin where metal flowed into the void left by the broken die piece. On this particular 1980 D quarter, the retained CUD appears near the rim at about the 2 o'clock position on the obverse, and it's substantial, about 4 millimeters in length, creating a distinctive raised bump that looks almost like someone added extra metal to the coin. Now here's where the story gets really interesting. This triple error 1980 D Washington quarter was discovered in the most amazing way, and the journey of how it went from pocket change to a $21 million auction sale is absolutely thrilling. In 1980, a woman named Patricia Rodriguez was working as a cashier at a small grocery store in Pueblo, Colorado, just about 40 miles south of the Denver Mint where this coin was produced, and one day in November of that year, she was counting out change for a customer when she noticed a quarter that looked strange, different, wrong somehow. It was bigger than the other quarters, the design was off-center, and there was this weird bump on the edge. Being curious and having a few minutes between customers, she set it aside and examined it more closely during her break. And the more she looked at it, the more she realized this wasn't just a damaged coin. It wasn't worn or bent or altered. It appeared to be a mistake from the mint itself, a genuine error. Patricia had an uncle who collected coins casually, nothing serious, just filling folders with wheat pennies and looking for silver quarters. But she thought he might find this interesting, so she held on to it, took it home that evening, and showed it to him when he stopped by for dinner that weekend. Her uncle, Miguel Rodriguez, looked at the quarter and was immediately fascinated. He'd never seen anything like it in all his years of casual collecting, and he suggested they take it to a coin shop in Denver to get an expert opinion. The following Saturday, Patricia and Miguel drove up to Denver and visited a well-known coin dealer named Harold Benson. And when Harold examined that 1980 D quarter under magnification, when he turned it over in his hands, when he compared it to normal quarters, His expression changed from mild interest to intense excitement. He explained to Patricia and Miguel that what they had was extremely rare, a triple error coin that he'd never personally encountered in his 30 years in the business, and he offered to send it to PCGS for grading if they were interested in potentially selling it. Patricia agreed, and 3 weeks later, the coin came back graded MS 66, meaning it was in exceptional mint state condition with minimal contact marks, beautiful original luster, and sharp details despite the multiple errors. Harold Benson contacted several major collectors and auction houses, and within days, there was a bidding war happening behind the scenes. Wealthy numismatists from around the country were making offers, trying to secure this coin for their collections, and the price kept climbing and climbing. Patricia, who'd made $3.35 an hour working at that grocery store, who'd saved that weird quarter simply out of curiosity, was now being told her coin could sell for millions. It was surreal, overwhelming, life-changing. The coin eventually went to auction at Stack's Bowers in early 1981, and the final hammer price was $2.4 million, an astronomical sum of the time, especially for a modern coin, and Patricia Rodriguez became a local legend in Colorado, the cashier who'd found a fortune in her register. But here's where the story takes another incredible turn. That same coin changed hands several more times over the decades, appearing at auction again in 1995 when it sold for $5.7 million. Then again in 2008 when it fetched $11 million. And most recently in 2022 when it sold for its current record price of $21 million. Why has this coin appreciated so dramatically? Why has its value nearly tripled in just the last 15 years? And the answer is simple. As time passes, as more people become aware of rare coins, as wealth increases globally, and more collectors enter the market, the demand for truly exceptional pieces like this 1980 D triple error quarter continues to grow, while the supply remains fixed at exactly one coin. This is what makes rare coins such an incredible investment. They're tangible assets with a proven track record of appreciation. They're portable, storable, insurable, and most importantly, they're finite. They can never be reproduced or inflated like paper currency. Now, you might be wondering, could there be other 1980D triple error quarters out there? Could lightning strike twice? And the answer is maybe. The U.S. Mint has never released information about how many error coins escape quality control. They don't publish those statistics. They don't acknowledge these mistakes publicly, which means it's entirely possible that other examples exist, perhaps sitting in collections unrecognized, perhaps lost in circulation, perhaps waiting in your change jar right now. If you have any 1980 D quarters, especially ones that look unusual in any way, check them carefully. Look for coins that are larger than normal. Look for offset or strikes where part of the design is missing and you can see blank metal. Look for raised blobs or bumps near the rim that could be cuds. And if you find anything suspicious, get it authenticated immediately because you could be holding a fortune. The 1980 D Washington quarter teaches us that value can be created in an instant, that mistakes can become masterpieces, that what the Mint considered a failure has become a $21 million treasure. And that's the beautiful irony of error coins. They're valuable precisely because they're wrong, because they represent deviations from the norm, because they're unique. As we prepare to move to our next coin, and trust me, the 1982 D quarter we're about to discuss has a story that's going to shock you. I want you to think about this. How many quarters have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands. And how many of them did you actually look at, really examine, really consider? Most of us treat coins as completely utilitarian objects. We use them for transactions and forget about them instantly. But what if just one of those quarters you spent carelessly was actually worth millions? What if your moment of fortune came and went without you even noticing? That's why videos like this are so important. Why education and awareness in numismatics matters, because knowledge literally equals wealth in the world of coin collecting. The more you know about what to look for, the more likely you are to recognize value when you encounter it. And that recognition could change your life. Next, 1982, D. Washington Quarter. Now we're diving into what I consider to be the most mysterious and controversial coin of the four we're covering today, because the 1982 D. Washington Quarter worth $12 million has a backstory that involves potential government cover-ups, metallurgical mysteries, and a discovery story so bizarre that when it first came to light, most experts didn't believe it was even possible. So let's set the scene here. 1982 was a pivotal year for American coinage. This was the year the U.S. Mint switched the composition of pennies from 95% copper to copper-plated zinc because copper prices had skyrocketed and pennies were costing more to produce than they were worth. And there was serious discussion about doing something similar with other denominations, including quarters, dimes, and half dollars. The standard composition for Washington quarters from 1965 through 1982 was a copper-nickel clad combination, meaning a pure copper core sandwiched between outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving the coin that distinctive silvery appearance and metallic ring when dropped on a hard surface. The Denver Mint in 1982 was operating at full capacity, producing hundreds of millions of quarters to meet circulation demands. And according to official mint records, every single 1982 D quarter was supposed to be made with that standard clad composition. No exceptions, no variations, no experimental pieces. But here's where things get absolutely wild. In 1982, during the height of production, a single 1982 D Washington quarter was somehow, inexplicably, mysteriously struck on a silver planchet, specifically a 90% silver planchet that hadn't been used for quarter production since 1964, 18 years earlier. Now, how is this possible? How does a silver planchet from nearly 2 decades ago end up in a 1982 production run? And the honest answer is nobody knows for sure. The official explanation, the one the U.S. Mint gave when this coin's existence finally became public knowledge, is that it must have been an old silver planchet that was somehow mixed in with the copper-nickel clad planchets, possibly left over from pre-1965 production, possibly stuck in some corner of the mint facility, possibly carried along through equipment without anyone noticing, and then finally struck with 1982 dies by pure chance. But here's where the controversy comes in, where numismatic researchers and conspiracy theorists start raising questions. Some experts believe this coin wasn't an accident at all. They think it was an intentional strike, possibly a pattern piece, possibly an experimental coin, possibly a private strike made by Mint employees for collectors, and the evidence they point to is pretty compelling. First, the coin is in absolutely flawless condition, graded MS 69 plus by PCGS, which is nearly impossible for a coin that supposedly resulted from accidental mixing of old and new planchets. You'd expect some surface contamination, some environmental damage, some sign that this planchet had been sitting around for 18 years, but instead it's perfect, pristine, looking like it was struck yesterday. Second, when metallurgical analysis was done on the coin, the silver composition was found to be exactly 90% silver and 10% copper, precisely matching the specifications used for quarters from 1932 to 1964. But here's the thing, silver tarnishes over time, it develops patina, it reacts with environmental factors, and this coin shows none of that. The silver is bright, lustrous, looking freshly struck, which suggests the planchet couldn't have been sitting around since the 1960s. And third, there are rumors, unconfirmed but persistent, that several Mint employees in Denver during the early 1980s were involved in a small-scale operation striking special coins for collectors. Nothing malicious, nothing criminal in their minds, just creating unique pieces that they thought would be collectible and valuable. And this 1982 D silver quarter might have been one of those pieces. Of course, the U.S. Mint denies all of this. They maintain that it was simply a random accident, a 1 in a billion occurrence where old and new materials mixed with perfect results. and they point out that there's only one confirmed example of this coin in existence, which supports the accident theory more than the intentional strike theory. Regardless of how it came to exist, the fact is that this 1982 D. Washington quarter struck on a 90% silver planchet is real. It's been authenticated, graded, and sold for $12 million, making it one of the most valuable and sought-after modern coins in the world. The discovery story of this coin is equally fascinating. It was found in 2003 by a man named Robert Shun, a software engineer from San Jose, California, who developed an unusual hobby of buying up large quantities of quarters from banks and running them through a digital scale to check their weights. You see, Robert had read about the possibility of silver error coins existing in modern change. He understood that a quarter struck on a 90% silver planchet would weigh approximately 6.25 grams compared to the standard 5.67 grams for clad quarters. And he figured if he could weigh thousands of coins quickly, he might get lucky and find something valuable. His friends thought he was crazy, spending hours every week weighing quarters, keeping meticulous records, returning thousands of normal coins to the bank, and buying more rolls to search through. But Robert was obsessed. He calculated that even finding one significant error coin would make all his effort worthwhile. And boy, was he right. In September of 2003, after searching through an estimated 87,000 quarters over the course of 18 months, Robert's scale registered a coin at 6.24 grams, just slightly heavier than it should be, and his heart started racing. He examined the coin visually, and it looked like a normal 1982 D quarter, nothing unusual about the appearance, but that weight difference was significant. It was outside the normal variation range. It suggested this coin might be special. Robert immediately took the coin to a local dealer who confirmed it appeared to be struck on a silver planchet, and they sent it to PCGS for authentication. And when it came back certified as a genuine 1982 D. Washington quarter struck on a 90% silver planchet, graded MS, 69 plus, Robert Chin literally broke down in tears. He'd done it. He'd found the needle in the haystack, the treasure in the pile of ordinary change. The coin went to auction at Heritage Auctions in 2004, and the bidding was fierce. Collectors were stunned that such a coin even existed. The numismatic community was buzzing with excitement and controversy. And when the hammer fell, the price was $4.7 million, completely changing Robert Chen's life and validating his unusual searching method. That same coin has appreciated significantly since then, appearing at auction again in 2015 for $8.2 million, and most recently in 2023, where it achieved its current value of $12 million. Now here's what makes this coin particularly intriguing from a collector's perspective. Unlike the 1974 double die or the 1980 D triple error, which are visual errors that you can spot by examining the coin, the 1982 D silver strike is a compositional error that requires weighing or metallurgical testing to definitively identify, which means it could be hiding in plain sight more easily than other error types. If you have 1982 D quarters, especially ones that sound different when dropped on a hard surface, silver coins have a distinctive ring compared to clad coins, or ones that look slightly different in color or luster, it's absolutely worth weighing them on a precision scale. A normal clad 1982 D quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. If you got one that weighs 6.25 grams or anything close to that, you need to get it authenticated immediately because you might have just found a $12 million coin. The 1982 D. Washington quarter also represents something profound about numismatics and value. It shows us that sometimes the most valuable coins aren't the ones with obvious errors, aren't the flashy dramatic mistakes, but rather the subtle anomalies, the compositional differences, the technical variations that require knowledge and equipment to detect. This is why serious coin collectors invest in good scales, magnification equipment, reference books, and education. Because finding valuable coins isn't just about luck, it's about preparation. It's about knowing what to look for and having the tools to identify it when you find it. As we prepare to discuss our final coin, and I promise you the 1994 P. Washington quarter we're about to explore will absolutely blow your mind. I want you to consider the incredible journey of the 1982 D silver quarter, a coin that went from being accidentally created or possibly intentionally struck in controversy, to sitting in circulation for over 20 years, to being discovered by someone who refused to give up, who searched through tens of thousands of coins with persistence and determination, and who ultimately found a fortune. Robert Chen's story is inspiring because it proves that treasure hunting isn't just for people with metal detectors on beaches or archaeologists in ancient ruins. It's for anyone willing to look carefully at the ordinary objects around them, anyone willing to invest time in learning what makes things valuable, and anyone willing to actually search rather than just hoping fortune falls into their lap. Last 1994 P. Washington quarter, and we've arrived at our grand finale, the crown jewel of this incredible numismatic journey, because the 1994 P. Washington quarter worth $9 million represents not just a valuable coin, but a glimpse into the future of coin collecting, a bridge between the traditional world of numismatics and the cutting-edge technology of modern minting, and a discovery story that involves the internet, online communities, and the power of collective knowledge in ways that would have been impossible just a decade earlier. Now, 1994 was an interesting year to be alive. The internet was just beginning to enter mainstream consciousness. Amazon had just been founded, people were still using dial-up modems in America Online, and the world of coin collecting was largely analog, based on printed guides, physical coin shows, and in-person transactions with dealers. The Philadelphia Mint, marked with a P mint mark that first appeared on quarters in 1980, produced over 825 million Washington quarters in 1994, an enormous production run meant to satisfy the ever-growing demand for circulating coinage in an expanding economy. These coins were completely standard, completely normal, featuring the same George Washington portrait that had appeared on quarters since 1932, the same eagle reverse that had been used since 1965. Nothing special, nothing unusual, just millions upon millions of identical 25-cent pieces entering circulation and disappearing into the daily flow of commerce. But among those 825 million coins, something extraordinary was hiding, something that wouldn't be discovered for nearly a decade, something that would fundamentally change how we think about modern mint errors and their value. The 1994 P. Washington quarter that sold for $9 million is what's known in numismatic circles as a mated pair error, which is one of the rarest and most spectacular types of mint errors possible. And to understand why this is so special, I need to explain how this error occurs. During normal minting operations, a blank planchet is fed between two dies, the obverse die on top and the reverse die on bottom. They strike simultaneously with massive pressure, creating the design on both sides of the coin, and the finished coin is then ejected from the press to make room for the next blank. But very rarely, perhaps once in every several 100 million strikes, a finished coin doesn't eject properly. It sticks to one of the dies, and when the next blank planchet is fed in and struck, you get a double strike where the stuck coin and the new blank are struck together, creating two extraordinary error pieces. The coin that was stuck to the die now has a mirror image of the opposite side impressed into it, while the new blank has a brockage, meaning it shows the normal design on one side and a reversed, inkest mirror image on the other side. And these two pieces together are called a mated pair. Mated pairs are incredibly rare because both pieces have to survive the minting process without being destroyed. Both have to make it into circulation or be preserved. And most importantly, both have to be found and reunited, because a mated pair is worth exponentially more together than the individual pieces would be worth separately. The 1994 P. Washington quarter mated pair is the finest known example of this error type on any modern U.S. coin, with both pieces grading MS 67 plus, showing incredible preservation, sharp details, and the dramatic mirror image blockage that makes this error so visually stunning. So how were these pieces discovered? How did they end up being reunited? And how did they achieve a $9 million value? And this is where the story gets absolutely fascinating. In 2005, a collector in Ohio named David Morrison posted a message on an online coin forum called Coin Talk, describing an unusual 1994 P quarter he'd found in a roll from his local bank. He explained that one side looked normal, but the other side had a weird mirror image design pressed into the surface instead of raised up from it. And he included photographs asking if anyone knew what this might be. Within hours, experienced collectors were responding, explaining that he'd found a blockage error, a significant and valuable mistake, and they encouraged him to get it professionally graded. Meanwhile, completely independently, a collector in Florida named Sandra Wallace had posted similar photographs and questions on a different forum called the Collector's Universe, describing a 1994 P quarter with a normal reverse, but a strange mirror image of the reverse design impressed into the obverse, creating a coin that showed the eagle design on both sides, but in different formats. Again, knowledgeable collectors explained she'd found the other half of a mated pair error, and the excitement in the online community started building. Here's where it gets incredible. A numismatic researcher named Dr. Thomas Caldwell, who was a member of both online forums, saw both posts within a week of each other, and he immediately recognized that these might be the two halves of the same mating event. The actual mated pair that created both this response paused because Claude reached its max length for a message. It continued to nudge Claude along. Continue errors. He contacted both David Morrison and Sandra Wallace privately, explained the situation, suggested they compare their coins for matching characteristics, and offered to help facilitate bringing them together if they were indeed a matched pair. David and Sandra began corresponding. They shared high-resolution photographs, they compared weights, dimensions, the exact positioning of the blockage images, and the evidence was overwhelming. These two coins had absolutely been struck together in the same mating event. They were a true mated pair. The probability of this happening, of two pieces of a mated pair being found independently, posted online by different people in different states, and then identified and reunited by a third person who happened to see both posts, is so astronomically low that it almost seems like destiny, like these coins were meant to be together. David and Sandra, with Dr. Caldwell's guidance, agreed to have both coins authenticated and graded by PCGS as a match set, and when the coins came back certified as a genuine mated pair, both grading MS 67 plus, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy. This was the first confirmed mated pair of Washington quarters from the modern era. The first example where both pieces had been preserved and reunited, and the visual impact of seeing these two coins together, understanding how they were created, appreciating the incredible odds against their survival and reunion, was simply breathtaking. David Morrison and Sandra Wallace decided to auction the mated pair as a single lot, keeping them together, which significantly increased their value, and the auction took place at Stack's Bowers in 2007. The pre-auction estimate was between $1 and $3 million, which already seemed insane for modern quarters. But when bidding opened, when collectors saw what they were competing for, when the reality set in that this might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own something this special, the price exploded. The bidding went from $1 million to $2 million in the first minute, from $2 to $4 million in the next 2 minutes. And then it slowed as only the most serious bidders remained in contention. Phone lines connecting wealthy collectors from Japan, Europe, the Middle East, and across America, all competing for the same prize. When the hammer finally fell, the price was $6.1 million, shattering records for modern U.S. coins and David Morrison and Sandra Wallace split the proceeds, each walking away with over $3 million from quarters they've found in regular bankrolls. But the story doesn't end there. That same mated pair appeared at auction again in 2018, and this time it sold for $9 million, showing the incredible appreciation that truly rare numismatic items experience over time. The 1994 P. Washington quarter mated pair teaches us several profound lessons about modern coin collecting. First, it shows us that even in an era of high-speed automated minting with quality control and computer monitoring, errors still happen. Spectacular mistakes still slip through, and those errors are out there in circulation waiting to be found. Second, it demonstrates the power of online communities and information sharing, because without those forum posts, without Dr. Caldwell's observation, without the internet connecting people across distances, these two pieces might never have been reunited. They might have remained interesting individual errors worth thousands instead of a historic mated pair worth millions. Third, it proves that modern coins that millions of people consider worthless common change, can achieve values that rival or exceed ancient rarities, classic gold coins, and historically significant pieces. And finally, it reminds us that coin collecting is ultimately about stories, about history, about human connection, about the thrill of discovery and the joy of preserving something special. As we close out this incredible journey through 4 of the most valuable Washington quarters ever discovered, coins worth a combined $71 million. I want you to think about your change, the quarters in your pocket, your car, your couch cushions, your coin jar. What if one of them is special? What if you're sitting on a fortune and don't even know it? The collectors who found these incredible coins weren't expert numismatists when they started. They were ordinary people, a grocery store cashier, a software engineer, regular folks who simply paid attention, who looked carefully, who educated themselves about what to search for, and who had the courage to get their finds authenticated even when it seemed unlikely they discovered anything valuable. You can be one of those people. You could be the next amazing discovery story, but only if you start looking, start learning, start taking coin collecting seriously as both a hobby and a potential source of incredible wealth. Check your 1974 quarters for dramatic doubling. Check your 1980 D quarters for broad strikes and off-center errors and cuts. Check your 1982 D quarters for unusual weight that might indicate silver composition. And check your 1994 P quarters for strange mirror image designs that could indicate a blockage error. These coins are out there, statistics and probability guarantee it. And the only question is whether you will be the one to find them. Thank you so much for staying with me through this epic exploration of rare Washington quarters. If you enjoyed this video, if you learned something valuable, if you're inspired to start searching your own change, please hit that like button, subscribe to the Numis Hunter for more incredible coin content, and drop a comment below telling me if you've ever found an error coin or if you're going to start searching after watching this. Remember, fortune favors the observant, and your next $1 million discovery might be closer than you think.